The morning of June 13, 1944, in the dense, thorny hedgerows of the bocage country near the French village of Villers-Bocage, dawned with the scent of damp earth, blooming hawthorn, and diesel exhaust. For the men of the 2nd Panzer Division, veterans of the Eastern Front, the landscape was a labyrinth, but their mood was one of predatory confidence. They had just crushed a bold British armoured thrust into the town the day before, decimating the famed 7th Armoured Division, the Desert Rats. Now they were mopping up, hunting isolated pockets of resistance. Their weapons were the pinnacle of German engineering, Panzer IV and Panther tanks, their long 75 guns capable of killing any Allied armour at 1,000 meters. What they encountered in a narrow country lane, however, defied all their doctrine. It was a low, green-painted box on tracks, barely taller than a man. It had no turret. From its sloped front, what appeared to be the ridiculously long, thin barrel of a cannon protruded. To the experienced German tank commanders, viewing it through their Zeiss binoculars, it was a joke. It looked like a child's toy, a Holzkanon, a wooden cannon. They had no idea they were looking at the future of anti-tank warfare. This was a British self-propelled gun, the Achilles, a variant of the American M10 tank destroyer. Its cannon was not wood. It was the 17-pounder, one of the most devastating anti-tank weapons of the war. And on this day, in the hands of a single troop from the 75th Anti-Tank Regiment, Royal Artillery, it was about to rewrite the rules of engagement in the bocage. The Achilles was not designed for a stand-up fight. It was a tank destroyer, an ambush predator. Its philosophy was simple: immense firepower sacrificed for armor and profile. Where Sherman tank had 75 of frontal armor, the Achilles had barely 25, enough to stop only small arms fire. It had no turret roof, making its crew of 5 vulnerable to mortars and grenades, but it carried the 17-pounder gun. This weapon fired an armor-piercing discarding sabot, APDS, round, a tungsten-cored dart that left the barrel at over 3,900 feet per second. It could slice through the frontal armor of a Panther at ranges where the Panther's own gun was still superior. The Achilles' strength was not in taking hits, but in not being seen until it was too late. Commanding one such vehicle, serial number T225875, was Sergeant George Dring, a calm, methodical former clerk from Nottingham. His crew, gunner Lance Bombardier Titch Smith, loader Bill Harper, driver Ken Hutt, and wireless operator Sam Tate, had spent the chaotic days since D-Day surviving rather than fighting. Isolated after the debacle at Villers-Bocage, they had been ordered to hold a key crossroads codenamed Point 213, a patch of high ground overlooking a network of sunken lanes. They were not alone. 2 other Achilles and a few infantrymen from the 1st Rifle Brigade shared the position, but the feeling was one of being a forlorn hope. They camouflaged their vehicle with cut branches and netting, backing it into a thick hedgerow so only its long, sinister gun barrel protruded through a carefully crafted gap. They were a spider in a web of green. The first German probe came mid-morning. A reconnaissance element, a pair of armored cars and a half-track of Panzer grenadiers came cautiously up the lane. They were not the main event. Dring held his fire. The infantry, hidden in the ditches, opened up with Bren guns and Piats, forcing the Germans to dismount and take cover. The sound of the skirmish was the dinner bell. It drew the heavy metal. Through his binoculars, Dring saw the 1st Panzer IV nosing around a bend in the lane 800 meters away. It was advancing slowly, its commander's head out of the cupola. It stopped, its gun traversing, searching for the source of the infantry fire. It had not seen the Achilles, its low silhouette and perfect camouflage making it part of the hedgerow. Dring, his voice low and steady, began calling ranges and corrections to his gunner. Target, Panzer Mark IV, 800, hold half a hull. APDS. In the tight fighting compartment, the atmosphere was one of intense, silent focus. Harper slammed the long, slender APDS round into the breech. Smith, his eye glued to the dial sight, made a final adjustment. On. Fire! The 17-pounder did not roar like a tank gun. It issued a deafening, sharp crack, like a colossal bullwhip, followed by a distinctive supersonic crack as the projectile broke the sound barrier. The recoil rocked the light vehicle on its suspension. The effect on the Panzer IV was instantaneous and horrific. There was no shower of sparks. The tungsten core punched a clean, fist-sized hole through the frontal glacis plate as if it were tinfoil. Inside the German tank, the dart ricocheted in a storm of white-hot metal splinters, detonating ammunition and turning the fighting compartment into a blast furnace. The Panzer IV did not brew up dramatically. It simply died, smoke curling from every hatch. The German commander, who had been laughing at the wooden cannon sighted minutes before, was dead before he understood his mistake. The second Panzer IV, following closely, now understood the threat. Its commander yelled, and the tank reversed violently, seeking the cover of the bend. But the lane was narrow, and his retreat was clumsy. Dring's gunner tracked him. Another crack. The round hit the retreating tank in the thinner side armor near the engine compartment. It slewed to a halt, black oil smoke pouring out, its crew bailing out, clothes on fire. In the German command post, radio messages crackled with confusion. A forward observer reported his lead tanks destroyed by heavy anti-tank guns, possibly 76 well concealed. The notion that it was a single, thinly armored vehicle was not yet comprehended. The response was textbook: deploy more force. A platoon of 3 more Panzer IVs, supported by infantry, began a flanking maneuver, using a parallel lane to outflank the troublesome position. Dring, anticipating this, had already moved. The Achilles' great advantage in the Bocage was not just its gun, but its mobility and low profile. With Hutt at the controls, they backed out of their first hide, rumbled 50 yards down a sunken track completely concealed from view, and pushed into a new hedgerow, covering the flanking approach. They repeated the ritual, cut a firing port, drape netting, wait. They were ghosts in the green maze. The German flanking force advanced, confident they had circumvented the threat. They were, in fact, driving directly across Dring's new kill zone at a range of 400 meters, point blank for the 17-pounder. He engaged them in rapid succession. Crack. The lead tank's turret was punched clean off its ring, landing with a crash in the road. Crack. The second took a hit in the drive sprocket, its track whipping off, immobilizing it. The crew abandoned it under machine gun fire from the British infantry. Crack. The third, attempting to reverse, was hit in the lower hull. An internal fuel fire ignited, the ammunition following seconds later in a thunderous explosion that shook apples from the trees. By midday, the crossroads was a graveyard of smoking Panzers. The air stank of cordite, burned rubber, and a sharper, more terrible smell of roasted metal and flesh. Dring's crew was operating on pure adrenaline. They were deafened by the concussive blasts of their own gun, their uniforms soaked with sweat. They had no time to count kills. They were in a rhythm of shoot, scoot, and reload. The wireless crackled with reports of more German movement. A heavier engine note joined the din, the deep-throated growl of Panther tanks. The Panther was a different order of beast. Its sloped A-team frontal armor was considered nearly invulnerable. The first one appeared, a colossal dark green Predator, its long 75 kW K-42 gun probing. It spotted one of the other Achilles, which had foolishly exposed itself while shifting position. The Panther fired. The high-velocity shell struck the Achilles' thin side armor, piercing it effortlessly. The vehicle was obliterated in a catastrophic internal explosion, a grim reminder of the price of exposure. Dring watched the Panther through his periscope. It was now hunting him. He knew a frontal shot was a gamble. He needed a flank shot. He ordered Hutt to move again, using a drainage ditch for cover. They emerged in a small orchard, perpendicular to the lane where the Panther was cautiously advancing. They had a clean view of its side. The range was 250 meters. APDS, hull center mass. Smith's voice was a dry croak. The gun was already loaded. Fire! The crack was met by a sound like a giant hitting an anvil with a sledgehammer. The APDS round struck the Panther's side armor just behind the turret. It did not explode on the outside. It vanished inside. For a second, nothing happened. Then hatches blew open and the crew scrambled out, not on fire, but ashen-faced and retching. The dart had turned the fighting compartment into a storm of spall without igniting the ammunition, a mobility kill that rendered the beast a silent metal corpse. The crew, understanding another shot would finish them, surrendered to the nearby infantry. The day dissolved into a series of violent, short-range engagements. Dring's Achilles became a phantom, appearing at one hedgerow to kill a half-track, then at another to smash a Panzer IV acting as an artillery observer. German infantry, trying to stalk the vehicle with Panzerfausts were cut down by the coaxial Bissam machine gun or by the vigilant rifle brigade. As dusk finally settled, the German attacks ceased. The 2nd Panzer Division, bloodied and baffled, withdrew to reorganize. They had thrown a company of armor against a crossroads and been systematically dismantled by an enemy they rarely saw. At the regimental command post that night, the reports were collated. The action at point 213 was a bright spot in a dark week. The tally for Sergeant Dring's troop was confirmed by rec counts and infantry reports. 15 German armored vehicles destroyed or immobilized in a single day's fighting, Panzer IVs, Panthers, armored cars, and half-tracks. The primary killer was Sergeant Dring's Achilles. The wooden cannon had proven its point. It was not a cannon of wood, but of tungsten and cold calculation. It demonstrated that in the close quarters hell of the bocage, where seeing the enemy first was everything, a weapon designed for one purpose, to kill tanks from hiding, could triumph over thicker armor and heavier turrets. The Panzers had laughed at the long, thin barrel poking from the hedgerow. They stopped laughing when it began to speak, in the sharp, final crack of the 17-pounder, a language they understood all too well.